good though, if she was always behind us, because I was doing it too, and then I got started a couple times. It'd be good to
I
have
have no idea.
Jamie be the official
It's the
backup.
first time I'm seeing it.
I will report out and I will
This, I don't know what this
verify
means,
it.
Oh,
because that's what's gonna happen.
oh,
It's truth.
good job, words. I think there was so much discussion. Just alter
We're
it.
gonna hear it from
Jimmy.
our here,
You're just
Face course of what? Faith course?
Progress.
Oh, really? Never heard of that either. I was talking to someone today who said they were buying a face course. Never heard of that.
I don't know either.
Oh.
It's a new word. I think, yeah. You can come up with your own stuff.
There's a hummingbird out there.
Is it out there? Is our theater out there?
Yeah, we've done the bar window.
I had bears come to my feeders.
Just like sure it was.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
When they were sometimes they have to toss it. They put it in.
They call it catch it brown.
Yeah. You know, last year at my camp,
Just think of
my screen tent, I could like get them out, yeah. And so I finally got a paper bag and just kind of slowly moved it over again. And they moved so fast for quite some time. There's no way. I was finally able to move him out of the, I was terrified that the guy was gonna die in there. He just couldn't figure it out. Oh, man. But he's fine. Farming someone else.
Yeah, right?
So neat.
Go where you do it.
we do like, oh wait, one day is Thursday.
I sprayed my plants with Bovex. I mean, this weekend. What is it? Because the deer will eat all of our, it's like a really gross smelling natural thing, and you smell like garbage after you use it. It's really awful, but it keeps the deer away. Yeah, Bovex. B-O-V-E-X.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I've heard that too, or human hair.
All right, let's call the 8th regular meeting to order.
18.
18th regular meeting to order. We've certainly been, right, we're here for a lot more than 8. Kyle, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I would love
Thank you, sir.
a pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. First order of business is to act on our minutes from the last meeting. Does anyone have any thoughts or comments on prior minutes?
Move to accept as written.
Great. Well, then they will be approved by unanimous consent. We shall move on to the public comment period. I just want to remind folks that our board meetings are conducted for the purpose of carrying out the official business of our schools. And it is important to note that each of the meetings of the board are open to the public. However, they are not public forums. At each full meeting of the board, time is allocated to provide opportunities for citizens and employees to express opinions and concerns related to the matters under consideration by the board. And these comments shall be within the guidelines set forth in policy BEDH, the Public Participation Board Meetings Policy. Copies of that policy are here if you need a copy, and they're also on the district's website. I just want to highlight the following. The chair, myself, is responsible for recognizing all speakers. We ask the speakers identify themselves by sharing their name and town of residence. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes to express their views. Speakers should direct all comments to the board, specifically to me, the board chair. This is an opportunity for the board to listen to the opinions of the public that relate to school and education matters. It is not intended to be a conversation or a debate of issues. We know that school-related issues can be emotional, but we ask that civility is maintained. We will not permit profanity, gossip, defamatory comments, shouting at one another, or comments that disparage or attack individuals or groups. Also recognize that the board is faced with many important issues, and for the sake of efficiency, the board discourages duplication or repetition of comments. The board will also not permit complaints or allegations against staff members. We certainly care about these concerns, but they are personnel matters, which the board is not permitted to hear in public. If there are complaints against staff, these will be handled appropriately through our complaint policy, KE. Again, KE is also on the website. And to reiterate that this series of points I just made are just a highlight. Please refer to policy BEDH for a complete description of the public participation policy. With that, are there any folks that would like to stand up and speak?
I guess it's my turn.
Okay.
Jimmy Childs. So, any resident or employee of the district may propose new policies or revisions to existing board policies. Seeing where IJJ is being brought up, I know I've made it known that I think that it should curtail to the internet policy and on their prohibitions, and is that something that the board committee is going to look at just by me speaking that like that, or do I have to have that in writing? Or is that a good idea, do you think?
Again, the purpose of this is not necessarily to have a discussion around it, but I would certainly make sure you're aware that the policy subcommittee is going to be first taking that up, and I think probably attendance at that meeting to understand what's going on.
If I attend that, can I be involved a little bit, ask questions, get answers at all?
I would suggest any requests you have come in writing, and we can certainly consider them.
All right. And I know that the books are a hot topic, you know, the stuff that's in the book, you know, it's just things that, just the language, you know, nobody wants their kids reading that type of language. My kids come home saying those words and that stuff, you know, it's not a moral society for that type of language, you know, let alone the pictures. You know, that's why it's so concerning, that's why it's still here. You know, that's why I'll continue to fight. And I noticed that, so when the policy is being reviewed, they're gonna meet with the representative from the teachers union. That is a major conflict of interest in that department, because that person is the one that brings in the material and does not want to let them go. You know, so I don't know what we can do about that. You know, the fact that you're not going to pry them books out of her hands.
When you say her, are you referring to a specific?
Librarian.
Okay, I'm just going to stop you for a minute.
That's why I didn't mention her name.
No, but you did mention the high school librarian. It's somewhat like saying the red guy in the red shirt at the table in front of me. Everyone knows who you're referring to.
Yeah.
So please refrain from talking about specific personnel. That's your first warning. Mr. Shostak.
I think that Mr. Childs' comments are not a complaint about her, but a complaint about the process that involves her. So I just would,
we are not going to sit here and talk about any staff member of the school.
I'm
in any
appealing
type
the
of
decision of
context.
the chair.
Okay, and overrule.
You can't do that. A point of order. When I appeal, that is a motion. It requires a second.
Only if someone wants to second it.
I'll
It
second.
requires a second.
You'll second it?
Then it
Okay.
requires discussion.
The reason I second it is I agree that we do not talk about individual employees in regards to issues regarding their job.
Mm-hmm.
But an employee or a certain person standing in a job, not how they're doing the job, not the fact that it was good, bad, or indifferent, but the fact they're on a committee or not is different than actually describing how they work on the committee. It's the makeup of the group, which I believe is the issue at question, not their activity in the group. And that's the only reason I second it, because I do believe there's a significant difference there. So whether it be or not. So that's the primary issue.
Okay, I just recognize.
Okay.
I can understand where you're coming from, and I think what we need to remember is that the policy still states that you can't talk about an individual. And so I think there would be a way for Mr. Childs to be able to say, my complaint is with how this committee is made up, right? And therefore have his complaint be heard without naming certain people on said committee that he is.
I actually did word it like that.
Excuse me,
and you-
Mr. Childs, you are not recognized. Please sit down for a moment.
So I think we can all win if we just acknowledge that this is a policy that exists, so choose your complaints carefully, right? Like, you can get at a point, you can still get your point across without,
As long as they have an opportunity to emphasize what their issue with the makeup is. It might have to be in a different setting
absolutely.
regardless, but
Yep.
to me, there is a difference in that, because you know,
Well, this is a difficult conversation to have because we have rules about it, and I'm not quite sure, without spending some time looking back through things, where exactly this is supposed to fall. We do have some pretty clear guidance that individual staff members of the school are not to be spoken about during school board meetings. And I think we should continue to be respecting that. And in my mind right now, we should not be allowing conversation about any individual member or any functions they're performing within the district. That's my opinion. Mr. Shostak?
We routinely talk about individual employees of the district. I think if you will reread the policy, you'll find that you are not to make complaints about the performance of an individual. Mr. Childs is not, to my mind, making any kind of complaint about that employee. He's simply stating that he has a problem with an apparent conflict of interest. He's raising that as a red flag, and I think that it is an appropriate topic for public comment.
Okay, is there any further discussion on this appeal? Do we have, we're going to take a vote, and just to be clear, that this vote is regarding the appeal Mr. Shostak just made. It was seconded by Mr. Ricker, or whether or not we should allow public comment to be talking about teachers.
My appeal is the strike against Mr. Childs. I don't have any say over the policy. The policy says what it says.
Your appeal is to my interpretation of the policy, which I interpret to be Mr. Childs is not allowed to speak
Giving him a
about
strike.
staff members. So that was the appeal. And so we'll take a vote on my decision to not allow staff members to be discussed at a meeting. All those in favor of Mr. Shostak's appeal? All those opposed to Mr. Shostak's appeal? Okay, the appeal is struck down. Go ahead, Mr. Childs, continue your comment, but please refrain from referring to any staff members.
Yeah, well, you made me mention her name, so, but there is core opinions, there's core rulings on public comment and whether they can, what they contain and people can talk about. And one going through the case is McBride versus, I don't know, the School of Herman or one of those. And there's a second one that he's going through the courts, and there's another one that I'm going to find for that. And when that comes that shows that you're wrong for doing that, then we'll discuss that further, because I think it's very inappropriate what's going on here against me. It's discriminative what's going on against me. I email you guys questions. I don't get no answers to you. I'm told to seek a lawyer's advice, the policies that you guys make and pertain. You guys can't answer any policy questions for me? No? So, and the fact that you're trying to shield these employees for the wrongdoings that there have been done, it just heats up the temperature way more. So, strike me down, do what you gotta do. You're being discriminative towards me, and it will be noted.
Okay. Thank you for your comments, Mr. Childs. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Yes.
going to.
Sure. What's
Do I
your
have to stand?
Yes, please.
Okay. I teach visual art.
What's your name?
Iva. IVA. So I teach at the high school. Mine was more of a share out of. I have an awesome opportunity of teaching painting and ceramics and sculpture. Those are on my docket right now. We, in painting class, do a materials and tech, so students learned, honestly, how to make encaustic paint and where that came from. So we talked about ancient Egypt, and we were using, we make it, so they are using beeswax, damar resin, and mixing it with pigments. From there, we move into ancient Greece, and we are doing traditional frescoes, where they're pouring plaster of Paris and then learning how to mix pigments with egg yolk and doing that. Flip side, in ceramics, they're learning how to cast and then making those ceramic replicas. Visual art world, COVID got hurt. It hurt us a lot, and one of the ones we have as a concern right now is plaster of Paris is something that most places are no longer carrying, and it was a shock this year. So it's impacting all three of those classes. At this point, the largest container I can actually get is about yay big, whereas pre-COVID I could get 50-pound bags. And now we're with this, or I have to specially order and they get smaller. But for my kids, it's a huge thing to be able to learn those different processes from the ground up. My sculpture class honestly was learning how to do a ton of different pieces over and over and over, and why it's important to learn how to cast these things, and what does that kind of have an impact for their art making. Just sharing out. That was my shift.
Thank you very much. Do we have any others interested in return? Okay. We shall move on to communications.
Yeah, so I would like to report the following resignations. Ryan Bushy, Maintenance Worker 2, effective tomorrow. Sean Daigle, Maintenance Worker 2, effective June 16th. Christina Swenson, Assistant Principal, Green Central School, effective June 30th. And Nicole Stevens, EdTech 3, Ettritt Middle School, effective the 31st. And we have 2 transfers to report. Jennifer Pooland, who is currently a literacy lab teacher, will be transferring to the new science social studies teacher position. That was something that is a new position that we're replacing what she was doing with an EdTech 3. So she's moving into that new position. And then Harry Haylock, who is a special ed teacher at the high school, is transferring to the Dean of Students. And just to remind you that the Dean of Students is a teacher position now, not an administrator, so he's transferring within the teacher contract.
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you very much. Adjustments to the agenda.
There were some made here. We added some new hires to the list, and we also needed to put in the very specific motions that need to be made to approve the budget vote. So those are the ones that were added. And there's one error. The strikeout on June 15th for the curriculum committee is not accurate, so we'll correct that.
Okay.
But those are the adjustments.
Sounds good. Committee reports, Finance Committee, Crystal.
We had an extremely brief meeting, which we'll be discussing on 8.4 of this budget. So I'll just wait.
Wonderful. And their next meeting is June 15th?
Correct.
Good. PTB, Kyle.
So we are continuing walking the schools. We have another one next Wednesday and then the following Wednesday, right? Yeah. So other than that, we're continuing walking, and our next meeting is June 1st.
Curriculum and policy, Jamie.
It was crossed out, but we are planning our next meeting, which will be scheduled June 15th at 5:30 at TES. And then, as we're all aware, the board voted to send policy IJJ to the CMP committee for review. And as we mentioned at that time, policy review and policy editing is a lengthy process involving many, many players. And much of that work is done behind the scenes. So we just wanted to keep the full board and community members kind of up to speed on that work, because even though it doesn't appear on the agenda, we don't want you to think that we haven't been working on that. So far, our assistant superintendent, Dr. Gillis, has been coordinating the efforts, gathering information for us. So she has collected sample policies from MSMA and Drummond and Woodsum. She's also had several phone conversations with Charlotte Bates. She kind of heads the policy committee at MSMA. Superintendent Med and Dr. Gillis then have met with Mr. Shaw and Ms. Lashman to discuss the current procedures that are used to purchase library materials and potential options of change moving forward. This will then need to be brought to the other district principals and librarians, and that is just per board policy BG. So anytime a policy affects stakeholders, we have to check in with the stakeholders. So that's kind of the process we're doing right now. So lots of work has been done, thanks to Teresa and Carrie for that. And more work will be completed before it comes to committee for review, so you probably won't see it on an agenda until that information has been brought to us. And yeah, we just think it's important that that work be acknowledged and that you guys stay informed. So the next meeting is June 15th, and it won't be on the agenda because we won't have that material ready yet.
Okay. Thank you, Jamie. Reporting out on the Tri-Town Education Association teachers negotiations, Jessica.
So we continue to meet regularly. I think as I'd reported before, we were initially doing an interest-based bargaining platform for how we were bargaining. And then as we're getting closer to the end of the school year, we had talked to our Teachers Association about maybe transitioning to a slightly more transitional bargaining platform to move things along a little quicker. And so both parties were in agreement with that, and that's what we did our last meeting, and I would say it moved things along, so that was nice. We do have an executive session today to review some of the progress we're making.
Okay, looking forward to that. Student representative report, Sydney.
So last weekend was prom for juniors and seniors, and this week on Wednesday, freshmen, sophomores, and juniors got to go to their Hive Week teachers, the teachers who are running their whatever Hive Week, program group they're in, and kind of figure out what that's going to be like for the last week of school, because we are quickly approaching that. There's been lots of finals preparations.
Very good. Things are starting to wind down. Administrator reports. We've got several tonight after not having some for some time, but Ms. Drysdale, Special Education Director, was going to go forward.
Thank you. So I have provided a board report. Are there any questions about the board report that I had provided with highlights and the Drummond and Woodsum advisory notice?
I will say that it would be hard not to have questions about some of that. So I don't know if you mind trying to give us a little bit of a synopsis of it. Yeah.
Yes. Well, as some of you might have noticed in the news a couple months ago, there was news coverage on the Perez versus Sturgis public school dispute. And that was settled in the Supreme Court, and it was the family previous to that had filed a due process case and had gone through that and was awarded damages at that point. But then they also decided to go through the ADA process under 504 because the student was a student with disabilities. And through that, the Supreme Court had ordered that not only can families go through the special education process, but they can also file for monetary damages under the ADA complaint process as well. So now families who students specifically are receiving special education now have two avenues to seek, whether it's damages or some sort of reparations through two different courts. When you're looking at the ADA process, that would be a federal process. So you'd have a court and a jury that would be determining the outcome of that process. When you go through a due process hearing, you have a process of mediation, essentially would have an IEP meeting, you'd have a process of mediation, and then from there, you would have a hearing officer who's trained and knowledgeable about the special education process, who would help navigate that with families and the schools, and then would come to a decision to be able to support whatever was, I think, most necessary for the student at that point. So at this point, it means that we continue to need to follow our child find process. We continue to need to follow that through the provision of services. And then we also need to be making sure that we're following our student plans, because this can be very costly. And it has a farther reach for those that are not knowledgeable in the process of education, making those decisions.
So I did include just a summary of that in when I've given you 2 updates, legal updates, so just so you know that's the second one that's in the packet is the one that Rebecca's referring to.
Are you going to speak to that again in your report? Okay.
Okay, thank you, yes.
Go ahead, please.
Can you kind of give us a synopsis of students' therapeutic needs within a self-contained setting? So what is that going to look like with Margaret Murphy?
So it's a program that Doug and I have been working on. It's our behavioral program that we've had at GCS. We had the program for about 14 years, and then at that point, we're not able to continue to staff it. So I reached out to Michelle Hathaway, director of Margaret Murphy, and so we have been planning last year. We're hoping to get something off the ground this year, but with staffing issues at Margaret Murphy, they weren't able to do that. So what we're hoping to do is we're in the process of actively seeking students. We're looking up to about 8 students from our school district, from the elementary schools specifically. And then in that program, it would be students that need a level of therapeutic behavioral support that would be in essentially two classrooms at Green during the school day. They would also participate in specials, and lunch and recess, but a majority of their instruction would be in a self-contained setting with a teacher. And what they would have is ed techs, behavioral health professionals that would be working one-on-one with each student. We do have a variety of students in each of our schools, and so we're going through that process. Right now, we have the mindset of really doing early interventions, so we're starting at pre-K to about 2nd grade. Now, I say pre-K, but this district, I really appreciate this for this district because we have students coming in that might have already had a year of pre-K, but they would really benefit from another year, and so those students then become ours, but we also will maintain them in that pre-K status, so we'll be able to offer that support for them as well. We're very excited.
Awesome.
Oh, and then also, can I just mention one more thing to that?
Oh, yeah.
I did put in there, Margaret Murphy has had partnerships with area schools, Lewiston, Auburn, and our district, actually. They helped us start up the autism support program, but the intent was always that we would absorb that program. At this point, the state is endorsing programs or districts that are partnering with special purpose private schools, and they are going to be helping us financially to be able to pay for the program. So we're not at this point looking to have a program that we're going to take over. We're looking for a long-term partnership. I just wanted to share.
Great.
Remember that when they were here.
Yes.
I just wanted to look at the second paragraph where you just said you hired a school psychologist that we've had open for 5 years.
Yes.
So congratulations.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
That's wonderful.
Yes, we're very
So
excited.
is that going to be a district-wide school psych?
It is, yes. So that will be, and she's going to be on site. It's an individual with lots of experience coming from New Hampshire, actually retiring to Maine, but not ready to retire yet, thankfully, and wants to work in our district. So it is very exciting.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Very good. Glad you highlighted that. Anyone else? Questions? Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Brito. Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Big things coming up. We all should have a graduation announcement, and we would love it if you would all come. It's quite an evening. We will be celebrating the students who are graduating. I believe we have 10 high school diploma students and 8 high-set equivalency students graduating, so it's a great year for us. Notably, we have the recently retired Director of Adult Education from the state coming to give the commencement address. But I also have students who are performing at graduation for the first time in my memory. So we're very excited about that. We have a student who's singing, a couple of students who are playing their instruments, and so they really invested in their ceremony. So if you're able to, please come out and support them. There will be dinner afterwards, and we have asked Dave to make a meal for us, and so I expect that we will have a wonderful time together. A couple other things going on. We have significant investments in professional development going on over the summer. We're sending 3 teachers to the Multi-Language Institute to help build up our English language programs. We also have one including myself participating online in an assessment program to help us to better use assessments in order to help students who come to adult education improve their literacy skills, improve their math skills, and thereby hopefully making them more competent as they seek to enter the workforce. So we have some exciting things going on this summer, and at the end of my very first full year as a director, we've had a great time, and thanks for everybody who's helped.
Thank you. Any questions? Yeah.
Just real quick, I said to some people before our meeting started, I think going to this graduation is one of the highlights to have been on the board, because I had never been to an adult ed graduation prior to coming on our school board, and it's really moving. It's really, it's a small group of people. You really get to hear some really personal stories. It's highly rewarding, so if you guys can make it, I would encourage you to do so.
Thank you.
Quite an endorsement, so we want to go. Mr. Parker.
Yes, good evening. Any particular specific questions on my board report before I highlight a couple of interesting things going on? Okay. Alrighty. One thing we're particularly proud of is that students at Green Central School completed the Kids Heart Challenge, aka Jump Rope for Heart, and we earned $4,398.74, all to benefit the American Heart Association. So we're very, very appreciative of Derek Jordan, Tammy Scott, kind of our PE teachers facilitating that whole giant experience. It was great to even have them. I had observed some PE classes and actually watched the littles try to even kind of get their basic skills going, and it was a really great thing. They did really, really well. The other thing I'd like to point out, we just had last Tuesday night, I can't believe that, our 20th annual Investors Fair. And yeah, I know, this is spearheaded by Jennifer Simmons, our school counselor, and it's essentially teams of 6th grade students working together to create and market a product that solves a particular problem or addresses a particular need of an assigned country. The process began in September, and it's sort of an all-hands-on-deck participation from library, from music, from technology. So each student completed an inventory of their own particular strengths, whether they're introvert, extrovert, what they enjoy doing. They researched a potential future career that they could see themselves doing. They built a budget based on their career salary, including expenses, learned how a mortgage worked. Car, utility, food, etc. So that was all incorporated in. They even engaged in interview practice to join a company based in whatever country they were going to be assigned in. They engaged, created an informational trifold. So this was in the gym, and it had information about the country, the national flag, that was researched in our library. Then they created a product image description, an original logo, some business cards, and then they did a full-on, with the audience coming in, a full-on marketing pitch, including questions and answers that were coming from all directions. from the adults that were attending. And their job was to convince potential investors to provide their company with part of the $300,000 that each investor received as they came through the door. So they were asked to choose 3 companies and provide $100,000 each for each of those. And they even wrote and performed jingles for their particular company. And I still have one particular one stuck in my head, and no, I'm not going to sing it. But they had no problem, just whatever it took to get the investment. And it ended up at the tail end, using all that skill and expertise. We had one company that earned $600,000, all the way up to a company that earned just shy of $2 million. So again, the activities are coordinated through the school counselor, and then we pull together reading, writing, art, social studies, music, tech, plus thinking about the softer skills, communication, self-reflection, time management, network building, empathy, and critical thinking. So it was a long process, extremely rewarding, and as always, the kids were fabulous. So, any questions? Thank you.
Thank you. I was, I turned. I have again. All right, Ms. Harris.
Does anybody have any questions on my report? I don't have anything nearly as exciting to share, but I'll do a show and tell. This is what we've done this year for PBIS. Instead of handing out paper tickets to kids when we're acknowledging their positive behavior, we give them these rings that I got from the Share Center. They look, I don't know if they're shower curtain rings or what, but we have a whole bunch of them. And when the bucket's full, we earn a school-wide reward instead of individuals getting trinkets. And they just filled it, so we're starting the next one. And so next Wednesday, we're going to have twins, triplets, and multiples day. Try to get your friends to dress just like you, and that's always fun. And then we believe we'll have enough time in the 15 days that are left to probably fill it again, and we'll probably do a school-wide recess for everybody all at once. The littles love to be with the bigs out at recess and vice versa, so that's always fun. Any questions?
I can attest that my daughter is very excited to dress up like her best friend.
Awesome. Yeah, it's so fun. I love taking pictures that day. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just one question.
Oh, go ahead.
You discussed in your report a little bit about your literacy consultant reviewing data. Could you talk a little bit more about how many children are able to read on level?
Oh gosh, I don't have that memorized. Sorry. We're right now in the middle of assessing our kids for the end of the year anyway, so I wouldn't have current data. The last time she was in, I believe, was around the end of third quarter. So, yeah, we were using the data, and she was helping us to make interventions for the kids that have specific needs, so that we would meet those needs and hopefully see some great growth, which I think we've done.
I would anticipate beginning the year with some reports from the end of the year to sort of provide that information.
Thank you.
Good question. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, Ms. Mates.
Any questions on my report?
It's not a flannel picture.
No, I was highlighting, we started a partnership. Carrie helped me with that. When I was at Worcester Middle School, just by proximity, we had a good partnership with LRTC, and then that sort of dropped off when COVID hit, and then switching over to this district. But then the middle school in Poland, where Carrie was before, also had a partnership, and so anyway, long story short, we reestablished like a junior mentor LRTC, and so for some of our kiddos, it's going to be a game changer as far as getting them interested in the trades. And so every other Friday, we had cohorts of kids that were going along with the high school LRTC students to participate in programs on like architecture, IT, working at the Green Ladle, doing culinary. So that's been going really well, so I'm hoping to grow that even further. And then in addition, they offered some remote control car camps over February and April break. In February, we had 7 spots, and there was a waiting list, and the kids were so good when they were there that they doubled it for us. It took 15 students in April. It's just awesome, because for some kids that wouldn't normally have anything to do over break, a van picked them up here at 7:30 in the morning. They were waiting every day of break. Took them to LRTC. They built and raced remote control cars, and then the van dropped them back off. And so it was just really cool. It changed their break experience. The only other thing I wanted to share, I was laughing because you were saying as the year winds down, and so in a building where 50% of your population changes every year, we're sort of like as busy as we can be. We call it draft day, and so it's been pretty awesome over the last couple weeks. We've been learning as much as we can about the incoming 6th graders. And then our leadership team met for about 6 hours total now, really intentionally placing every single student on a team and with an advisor who we think is going to be a really, really good fit for them, which is exciting because we just wrapped that up. And then in 2 weeks, the 6th graders will come to the middle school for field day, and they'll get to meet their new advisor and spend a couple hours with them, which will hopefully reduce the anxiety about coming to middle school because they'll already have a person before they even go into the summer. So I'm excited. We did that last year for the first time, and I think we did a really good job matching most of our kids, and so I'm hopeful that'll be the same. So I'll have another board member with a kiddo.
My daughter was very excited. She, no offense, Danielle, was like, if I have to go to 7th grade tomorrow, I'm going. Like, she's so excited, mostly for lunch. Yeah, she's very excited about the new options that are in front of her. So, but she really enjoyed her day. So,
Yes.
Are we, one of my concerns over the years has always been the incorporation of the 3 different towns. Are we doing, what are we doing over the course of the year to get ready for next August or September? You know, over the course of this year, how many times have the 3 different towns come together? Are we?
Besides football?
Because that was always something, I'm sure that COVID messed it up a little bit, but it was something that.
So you're talking about when the 6th graders all come together as
That has always been a big concern of mine, especially, and I'm not trying to, but the Leeds kids, or, you know, all of a sudden, the numbers just usually were. And when I was that age, decades ago, the only time we ever came together was we throw the balls at each other. Dodgeball.
Oh, yeah.
With
Oh my God. That is.
each town,
That's dark.
with each town having its own team.
That's
It wasn't
dark.
really working to combine us.
Yeah, that sounds awful.
We
But-
did floor hockey, dual polo, when I was in 6th grade.
But it wasn't mixed teams. When I did, we were Turner, you know, but that's how we met. We came here. But I always had a concern, and I was hoping that in maybe starting next year, so we can think of ways to bring the 3 6th grade groups together more often and intermingle.
So I think there are some activities.
Yeah, so that's noted. I joke about the sports, but there are a couple sports programs, field hockey and football in particular, that the 3 towns, it would be lovely if all of them could combine more regularly, but we did note that, and so we have already had one opportunity 2 weeks ago where all of the 6th grade students come. They have lunch with each other, they do a tour of the building, they meet some of the unified arts teachers, so that's sort of like the first opportunity. And then the next opportunity will be in a couple weeks where they'll spend the whole day with us. So there's at least 2 days on the calendar in which they get to be with peers. I agree, it's really overwhelming mostly for the lead students, just because a lot of them have been in one class together with the same group. With that being said, I can speak, it's only been 2 years that I've been there, but some of the students that we sort of received some red flags for as far as like challenges that they've had at the elementary school, like it disappears. It's a fresh start for them. They get to be separated from peers they might not have been able to get away from over the last 7 years. Like I said, we're really intentional about separating kids. On the same note, keeping kids together that need to be. And so we could definitely do more. But for some, just having that bigger environment that they're ready for works out perfect for them.
Because that's just one of the things I would love to see, and I appreciate that you're looking into it. And honestly, it doesn't fall on you really ton, it falls on the 3 elementary school principals as well, to make sure that 6th grade, maybe even look at field trips that, if we're having 6th grade field trip of any sort, let's combine the 3 different schools. Let's make that work together. Because, yeah, sports works, but having a child that was not into sports at all, there's a decent part of our population that don't have that opportunity. So, I'd love to see us try to think about that, because I've seen it, and that's a rough few months for some of them. And like you said, as they grow, they're going to really change, and the ones that you aren't think going to have a problem might have the problem, and those who do, so there's something to hope we look at more.
That's a good point. I mean, I vividly remember we had tournaments in gym class to get like the best green team and the best Leeds team and the best Turner team, and we all drove here to Leeds Central School and played, and the whole 6th grade came to this gymnasium and watched the little tournament between the best teams that came out of the gym classes. Yes.
But it was against each other.
But it was also a coming together. But yeah, anyway.
So we all get back there in the fall going, you.
Wow.
Anyhow. Anyway, moving on. Thank you, Miss Mates. Unless there's any other questions. Okay. Ms. Gillis.
Okay, let me. All right. So I recently was invited to be a judge shark for a Shark Tank presentation in chemistry. I had the pleasure of watching Sydney's presentation as well. That was a lot of fun, and I love spending imaginary money. So, also the testing window for our main through-year assessment wraps up tomorrow. I have been continuing to have meetings with the Atlas company that we will be using as our curriculum platform starting this summer. And tomorrow I meet again, and I'll be planning professional development for our teacher leadership core team, who will begin the process on June 21st. On Monday, I was able to attend a field trip as a chaperone with students from Turner Elementary School. We went to the Telling Room in Portland, and students participated in activities to support writing with the teacher leaders that are affiliated with this program. And it was really quite exciting, and we were grateful that we had a bus to get us there, even though we were a little late, but it was a super exciting project. So.
Great. Thank you very much. Ms. Med.
So I'm going to talk about transportation. So as you are aware, beginning last Friday, we had been talking about the potential need to cancel bus runs for a couple weeks prior to last week. We thought we would make it until Monday, this past Monday, but Thursday, I think, was the first time we had to cancel an afternoon run. Was it Leeds, Danielle? Yeah, sorry.
Lucky me.
We had a bus driver go out sick in the afternoon, and we just had no backup, and so had to scramble. And so our goal is to avoid scrambling as much as possible and give families as much notice. But we are down a bus driver. We have 0 substitute drivers. So, so we started the process. The first 4 days were rough because we had to cancel the same bus 4 times, and it was in Turner, so it's a very full bus, which causes a lot of traffic. There's like a snowball effect of all of that. Our goal is to obviously not do that. Our goal is to spread around as much as possible the disruption. The phone calls I got, everybody said, you said you were going to spread this around, and I went and reread my email. I'm like, I definitely did not, but I know you want me to say that. So we are trying really hard to pay attention to that, and hopefully avoid that 4 days in a row. But it's not a guarantee. Like, we're just in a position where I can't guarantee that. The administrative team met on Tuesday morning and we just processed sort of how it went. We've all agreed and are on notice that if a field trip is interfering with our ability to get the runs going, we're going to cancel the field trip. In this case, it was a van. We needed an extra van to get kids to LRTC, and the vans were all taken for field trips and everything like that. So that was one scenario where it's like, all right, the kid's going to LRTC. But Jana has driven a baseball team. Derek always driven kids to LRTC. Like, we are pulling in other staff to do those things. Coaches, I think, are driving more vans than they have been, and we've also had parents drive in the last couple of days for athletic events. So we are working hard at it, but it is not going to be resolved before the end of the year. We just don't have the staff. So the goal is that with full-time transportation director, the concern that I had that sort of made me work with Dave on this process, and Gabby obviously, was I was growing increasingly concerned that the staff we do have was not going to make it to the end of the year, or we would find ourselves in an even more difficult situation if they just sort of were burned out. So part of this decision is about maintaining the staff that we have and making sure that they can continue to work here and that they want to while we transition. So it's not it's a difficult situation, but that's where we are, and so we're just going to keep working. I know we've had some students where parents have called and said, I just can't get my kid there, and we've found a way to get their kid there, right? So as long as parents are doing that, reach out to principals, that's going to be the best way to do that, because we don't want to leave kids stranded if they can't get to school. So I don't know if there are any questions in particular around that. Transportation.
Or anyone that wants to drive bus.
Right. And my first email was like, how can community help? I'm like, really? Drive a bus. I did have a long conversation with parents, like, well, what does it take to be a van driver? I'm like, valid license, no criminal record. So maybe something like that will come of it. Being a bus driver is a very different animal and a lot more training, but yeah.
Do we pay for that bus training for, like, if somebody was willing to get their certification to drive a bus, would the district be able to forward the?
I'm gonna ask you, like, I'm not sure actually.
A lot of the training is done on site by our drivers.
Yeah.
So there's no cost to them, but I don't know about the licensure. If, like, when they send in, because as professional staff, we're required to maintain our own license and certification, and we pay for that. The district doesn't pay for that. I know the training is not at a cost. We absorb the time. We have 2 or 3 trainers in our district.
I'll find a follow-up, though. I don't know if that has been practiced in the past. The drivers we've hired this year, the most recent driver that we hired was a driver for us last year, left, came back as a substitute, and then wanted to be full-time. So that was our last substitute driver, who's now a full-time driver.
I just don't know if there's an upfront burden to getting licensed that we could look into.
It's a great question. Yep. I will follow up on that.
Jessica?
Oh, you're going, sorry.
So right.
I was waiting.
Yeah.
So are we doing anything for our current bus driving staff, just to kind of do some frequent check-ins with them, or just let them know, like, what are the steps that we're doing to maintain, I heard what you said about, trying to shield people and retain the staff we have, but are the actual people that are driving the buses, are they aware of those things, so that, because I think burnout is a real thing.
So the people who are our regular bus drivers, those people are doing their runs. It's the people who are organizing and trying to respond to shortages and, like, then working a tremendous amount of overtime and that kind of thing. That was the primary driver of the decision, or not driver, but like, is all the scrambling that's happening of people who are not driving a regular bus run.
Yeah, I'm just, I was a bus driver, and I knew there was no sub for my run.
Yep.
That would change the decision that maybe I had to go into work when I wasn't feeling well, or to cancel that dentist appointment that I had.
Yeah.
So I just wondered how they were kind of doing.
So I'll communicate with Dave around that. My assumption is that is the conversations they're having, but I'll follow up with Dave.
Yeah, and I just want to remind everybody, we made a deliberate decision that the facilities director and the transportation director needed to be split so we could be paying better attention to these matters.
Yeah.
And we have just hired this transportation director. So my sense is that we are going to be making this.
We just made the position, so we haven't hired anybody yet.
just made the position.
The position was created.
Yeah.
We had advertised it as anticipated until the budget passed. So
Yes,
now it's just
we're
fully
interviewing.
hired, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
We haven't
We don't
hired
have
anybody.
anybody in it at this.
right.
Correct.
Or we have
It starts
everybody
July
apply.
1. We do.
Oh, we do? Good.
Yeah,
Start, but and so the position begins July 1.
Okay.
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, any other questions, or do you have more on your report?
Yes, sorry, I have to find it. I wanted to just follow up with folks that I have already reached out to the Sheriff's Department. I reached out to the Sheriff's Department as soon as the budget passed to begin the process of having an SRO join our staff beginning July 1. I'm not sure exactly when that transition. The first thing we have to do is sign an MOU, an agreement with them about what that will look like, and then I've let them know that we want to participate in the hiring of that position. They are a Sheriff's Department employee, but because it is sort of in a contract with us, that we want a say in who that person is. So as soon as I get more information on that, we'll be starting that process. And then the final thing is I did include a legal update from Drummond Woodsum that speaks specifically to public participation, because it is a recent court case, so I just wanted to make sure that you all had that. It's relevant to sort of all school boards and how public comment is conducted. So I didn't know if there were questions on that. It seemed pretty straightforward to me, and sort of the emphasis on not discussing personnel in public comment. And I will say, because this question did came up earlier, I was talking to somebody, it's positive or negative. So if we had somebody get up and say, I want to talk about how awesome this particular teacher is, we would stop that, as well as stopping an attempt by somebody to complain. Like it can't be decided where it's some speech we like because it's nice to people and some we don't like because it's mean. We can't really just have it at all. So I think that is an important piece that just seems relevant.
Mr. Shasta.
So it's my reading of this is that it's not that we can't have it, but that we are able to restrict it. And what we're able to restrict is that, for instance, that personal confidential information will not be shared in a public session, and that personal matters or complaints concerning staff or issues will not be discussed. And if you turn to the second page, the policy should not prevent individuals from expressing their opinions about school operations, the curriculum, library materials, or other general concerns. I believe that this exonerates Mr. Childs, who was talking about school operations. He needed to be able to discuss the person in a particular
We're not talking
role.
about that issue.
I have the floor, I believe, sir.
Right. We're trying to address questions from the superintendent's report, not necessarily rehash older issues that we already voted on earlier in the meeting. But feel free to continue.
Thank you. So, if I can continue, that specifically gives room for somebody in a position like Mr. Childs, who is taking issue with a process that the school district has put into place, which he believes there is a conflict of interest because of the position that one person on that committee or involved in the process has an involvement that could influence their impartiality. So I don't know how he would be able to discuss that without at least referring to the person involved in such a way that as you said, well, the person in red shirt, I didn't name them, it's just not practical. Thank you.
Just to that point, when I made the statement I did earlier was according to our own policy that we have in place, not necessarily any kind of court decision. And we have a policy in place that prohibits the use or the discussion of staff in meetings. So that was what I was referring to, not anything to do with this today. So go ahead.
So I'll just offer this one last thing. I think my job is to ensure that the board is operating in a manner that's within the law, that follows the law, and follows policy. So the final line of that paragraph where Drummond and Woodson is providing legal guidance is really important. It says the board must be vigilant in enforcing the policy at each meeting to ensure that both positive and negative comments about named personnel are not permitted during public comment periods. This is direct legal guidance that is being offered to us, so I just want to make sure that everyone hears that and is very clear about it.
Okay. Moving on, unless there's any more questions for Ms. Med? And we're not opening this up to the public, I'm sorry.
I got you.
So, do any board members have comments or questions for Ms. Med? Okay, moving on to new business, because there is no old business. Instructional nominations to be acted upon collectively after nominations have been read by the superintendent.
So we are very excited. Is this our first crop of teachers we're hiring? It's very exciting. So at Green Central School, Danielle Allen, who will be a classroom teacher in grade 2, she comes to us from Lewiston, correct? Right? So. Beth Brown will also be at Green Central School. Beth was hired in the fall of this year into a 1-year position and has been rehired to continue on in her second year, which is fantastic. And then we have 2 hires at Turner Primary. Heidi Plant, who is coming to us from Brunswick, the school department Brunswick. She has moved to Turner, and so she is joining the Turner family. And then Erin Burnham is also coming to Turner Primary, and Jeekers Croy, she's coming to us from Auburn, and I think she also just moved to Turner. So 4 new hires for teachers.
So as I said earlier, this is a collective nomination of the entire group. Is there a motion to accept these nominations?
Motion.
Okay, Kyle, is there a second?
Sure.
Okay, Jessica? Any discussion on this?
Fantastic news.
Yes, it is good news. All those in favor? It appears unanimous, yes. Okay, moving on. Nomination of the district-wide school psychologist.
A unicorn. Valerie Crusoe, as I said, when Rebecca came to my office and said, I have a candidate, I almost fell out of my chair. I interviewed her and I said, I don't know, I think it's 50-50 whether or not she's going to come. But then she contacted us a couple days later and said yes. So we're very, very excited. She's experienced. Her references were awesome. And we're super excited to have our own school psychologist have a partner in this work and to not have to contract out all those evaluations. It's just going to be a real improvement and support to the whole special ed team. So Valerie Crusoe is our nomination.
Wonderful. Do we have a motion to nominate the school psychologist? Okay, a second. Tammy?
Who'd you get it to?
Well,
Jessica?
she gave it to Kyle.
Oh,
It's just because he's more prominent over there.
Arm is longer.
Any discussion around this nomination? Seeing none, all those in favor of the nomination? Appears unanimous. Okay, the next item of business, to authorize the superintendent of school to offer contracts and hire during the summer. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second? Kyle? It's easier for Teresa to see. Any discussion? Any discussion? Yes?
What did we do in the past? We have to do this every year?
Yes. So do you remember in August, our first meeting, there were like 25 teacher names on the agenda. All of those teachers had been hired between the last school board meeting and that first one.
Okay.
So it's to prevent us from having to wait until August 25th and maybe not, so you guys don't have to have meetings all summer long to approve them along the way. But you will see them all in August. And once that first meeting begins, you will be approving them just like you do now.
Any other discussion? Yes?
What happens if we don't approve it? I'm just getting curious, like if it would,
I'd imagine the world would stop spinning and
Yeah, I don't know, I'm just gonna.
the poles would melt. I don't know.
I've never, I mean, this is the common practice, I've never seen it happen before, but never say never, right?
But I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah.
But
So typically what happens is when a teacher is hired or an OT or a speech pathologist, whomever is hired, they don't officially get hired until the board approves it. So if we are competing for people, we don't want to push it off 3 or 4 months to the fall. We want to be able to say, you're contracted, here's your contract.
Yeah.
So I would foresee, like, with just this hot market right now, we don't want to hold people. We don't want to dangle the carrot. We want to sign them and get them under contract.
So just in terms of process, to give you a bit more information, these 4 teachers will get a contract emailed to them tomorrow. They were not given one prior to today. But they can't resign their position until they sign our contract. So it throws off the school they're leaving, because these teachers, yay us, except for Beth, who's already on staff, the 3 of them are all leaving schools. So if they don't get a contract from us and sign, they can't resign at their schools for those schools to begin to hire, which could also happen to us. So if we have a teacher leave, their board doesn't hire until August, they won't resign and we won't be able to look to provide that, to replace that person. So it is how all the schools operate.
Okay. Good. Those are good questions. Any more discussion? Okay, seeing no more discussion, those in favor of authorizing the superintendent to offer contracts during the summer? Looks like it's unanimous. The next item of business is approving the Finance Committee's recommendation on the new phone system lease purchase. Is there a motion there? Kyle? A second. Ooh. Okay. Discussion, I would welcome someone from finance maybe making a statement.
Yes. So you guys have a little packet. Wally brought to Terry's attention, just background here, that we were paying a really ridiculous amount of money for our phone system every year, which was roughly $49,000. Going with Cove Central, we are basically cutting that in half to $25,000, which will include the financing for the new system. And the recommendation, you have 2 leasing proposals, one from Androscoggin and one from Gorham. Gorham is coming in lower with the interest rate of 4.56, and that would be our suggestion.
Thank you. Yes, more discussion.
So I just quick glance, interest rate, Androscoggin Bank's higher but has tax exempt in parentheses. I would make the presumption that our 4.56 interest rate out of Gorham is also tax exempt. Okay.
Yeah, we've gone with Gorham pretty much on every single one of these as they've come, like whatever lease purchase we've done, Gorham's coming under.
Okay, thank you.
And it appears to be nearly a whole percentage point under on this one, so that's pretty significant. Any other discussion?
So
Yes.
can I just make sure that Kyle, you made the motion, that the motion is to approve the Gorham Leasing Group, right? Because we didn't put the name of it in the motion.
Sorry.
We should probably amend it.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that it's clear that that's the motion.
Yeah. Yes, Mr. Shostak.
I move that we amend the motion to the aforementioned wording.
Thank you. Is there a
And I
second?
will second that.
Okay. Is there any discussion on that amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment? Wonderful. Any further discussion on the main motion on the floor? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion? Appears unanimous. Okay. This is, I think you were saying, probably one of the most important things we're going to do tonight, which is
The most important thing, let's be clear.
the most. Approving the budget validation referendum. And I believe we need to approve all 3 of these points individually. So we'll start with a motion, if someone is willing to put this forward, to approve that the computation and declaration of votes dated May 25th, 2023, and attached hereto to be approved. Is that motion on the floor? By Crystal, seconded by Jessica. Any discussion around this? All those in favor? It is unanimous. Oh, did you vote in favor?
I'm looking for where they're attached.
Here, sorry. I'm gonna be bringing them around for your signature. So the actual,
All right,
do you
so
want
it's
me to?
not really attached.
Well, you have to sign the single document, so there can't be multiple documents of it. So every board member needs to sign it. You remember we did this back in like March? You had to sign, yeah. Do you want me to tell you what the tally is? Or
Sure.
the total was 249 in the affirmative, 211 negative.
So we stopped in the middle there because I wanted clarification on your vote.
I'll vote in favor.
In favor, okay, so unanimous. The next item is to approve that the computation and declaration of votes be entered upon the records of Maine School Administrative District number 52. Yeah. So move Crystal, seconded by Jessica, actually, Pat. I know it's in.
She's cold, cold.
Any discussion around this item? Seeing none, all those in favor? It's unanimous.
Right.
The third point is to approve that a certified copy of the computation and declaration of votes be sent to each of the municipal clerks of the member municipalities within Maine School Administrative District number 52. Mr. Shostak with the motion, seconded by Jamie. Any discussion? All those in favor? It's unanimous.
All right, can you send that down to Peter? We're gonna take 1 second to make sure everybody signs it. Thank you. I'm gonna give you all this stuff again.
Are you able to like dub in some intermission music on the feed, or is it
Radio silence.
radio silence? Okay.
I'm not worried. I'm not either.
I was gonna say, well, is it gonna mean you're not gonna go? No.
Interesting, yeah.
Hell's bells.
Highway to hell.
Should be like entertaining everybody.
I think it should be wearing the money.
Here we go.
Don't even think about keeping that pen.
Good.
Is this one yours?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I got my eyes on it.
You don't have your name on it.
I have my name on mine, so I can't take it.
We'll have to make you sit next to us.
I will sign it, and it is all legal.
And do we have to, there's an absent member tonight, there's no notation?
No, because I think it's like a majority, it says a majority have to
Majority.
sign it, so we're good.
We're good. We're good. All right, moving on. The first reading and acceptance of Curriculum and Policy Committee recommended revised policy DKC, Employee Expense Authorization and Reimbursement, and DKCR, Travel Reimbursement Request. I believe, do we need to take a motion to read this first reading? No?
It actually should be DKCE,
Okay.
because it's a form, it's not procedures.
Instead of DKCR.
Correct.
So E instead of R.
Yeah.
E instead of R.
It says E on the form.
Good.
Yeah, the form is correct,
Oh,
just a
okay.
typo there.
Yeah, I don't know who made this agenda, but
Don't mess with the secretary.
I'm not throwing any of this. I'm
I
responsible for
was
this,
letting
so you
him.
just let it go. You just send it my way.
Okay.
Do what you gotta do.
So is there a motion on the floor to discuss this?
So moved.
Second?
I'll say, oh, I think.
I think Kyle beat you. Any discussion around the policy DKC and DKCE? Does policy want to give us just a little?
Yeah, sure.
Thanks.
Just, now that people are traveling a little bit more, going to conferences, now that COVID's over and we have a new financial director, she just wanted this to be updated, especially the expense form, to make it easier and more understandable for her to reimburse employees, and it just lays out very specific details as to what can and cannot be reimbursable. So, including mileage. So we went
Also-
over it, Gabby went over it, it was very self-explanatory.
Unanimously sent to us? on the
Yes,
policy?
unanimous from the policy committee.
Wonderful.
And
Yes.
it also supports the federal guidelines that we have. Right. So we just wanted, there had been some changes, we wanted to make sure it all matched.
Because most of our professional development money is grant money. Is that correct?
Yes.
Actually, all of our professional development.
I didn't want to commit to all, but it's pretty close, yes.
99%.
Yeah, but even the federal guidelines for spending would be there.
Yeah.
Federal compliance, administrative streamlining, this sounds like a good one.
It's, yeah.
Are we in discussion?
Yes,
Okay.
go ahead, Phil.
Does this have to do anything with the transportation of some of the, faculty potentially jumping in and helping out with transportation or anything?
They're not driving their own vehicles, to
Okay,
be
so-
clarified. They're driving a school vehicle, right? Jana, you drove a school van to the baseball
And then when I
team.
took my own truck, I had parent signatures, but
She drove as a peer.
There's another
And
policy about
Derek
that.
took the LRTC kids in a school van.
Okay, so this is just primarily?
Right.
Okay,
Good question, thank you.
Yeah.
They were not driving their own cars.
yeah.
Yes. Any other questions? Okay. Seeing none. Can we take action even though it's first reading? Okay. Vote to approve the motion. Unanimous. Very good.
Every policy needs 2 readings.
Okay, we'll do it twice. Next item of business is the first reading and acceptance of Curriculum and Policy Committee recommended revised policy, KDB, Public's Right to Know and Freedom of. We have that motion on the floor.
So moved.
Jamie.
Second.
Any discussion?
Oh, no.
Yes, any discussion? And again, I think it would be helpful for someone from policy to just give us a little, please.
Sure, yeah. So this one was also unanimously sent to you. Guys, unanimous recommendation from our committee, and it is just to update the federal guidelines, the state guidelines that changed. Obviously, we've had lots of discussion about inflation, so some of it is the fee goes up to $25 per hour after the first 2 hours. And the verbiage on the front page to reflect the change in the law.
Okay. Does anyone have any other points of discussion with this policy? Yes, Mr. Rickard?
Do apologize, I just read some of the highlighted stuff, and
Yeah.
do we not charge for the first 2 hours? Or is that something we throw in for the fun of it, or?
Correct, we do not charge for the
Not allowed
first
to,
2
the law
hours. We're
doesn't
not allowed to.
Okay, the law doesn't permit us to?
Yep.
Okay. That answers that question. Gotta love the law.
Anything else? All those in favor? And it looks unanimous. So, the next item is the request for an executive session to discuss the Tri-Town Education Association teachers negotiations pursuant to 1 MRSA 4056D. Is that motion? Kyle?
Got it.
And Jamie? Any discussion around it? Okay, all those in favor? Unanimous and wonderful. We are going to have that here in this